Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
In national interest today, we are looking at the strategic picture around India, close to India and far away from India, the larger strategic picture. Also, Narendra Modi government's performance in that area. So first of all, let's list what has gone right. So first of all, what has gone right is the relationship with America. Because remember, ever since the Chinese came calling, sort of kicking at the door rudely in Ladakh, the only country in the world that has stood up quite freely and in quite an unqualified manner to support India's position is the US. No one else is doing it. EU is wishy-washy, not saying anything. None of our neighbors. Maybe some solidarity from Japan and Australia, but I'll come to that. But mainly it is America. So to that extent, this has gone right. Second, if you look at our distant neighborhood, there are at least those other big nations which fear China, say Japan and Australia, which are the other two members of the Quad, besides America and India. Those two have been quite explicit in their support for India and in their understanding of India's position. So those are good things which have happened. There are good things happening in Africa. India is more active than before. The relationship with Arab countries has improved. That is UAE and Saudi Arabia. The relationship with Israel is improved. Those are the positive things. There are other problems in the Islamic world, but that, frankly, I don't think India could have done very much about. There is Turkey and Qatar. Both those countries we know are heavily influenced by Muslim Brotherhood. Who uses whom is a different debate. Maybe those countries' rulers use Muslim Brotherhood instead of the other way around. But that's how it is done. And there, Turkey is somewhat more explicit in its attacks on India. Qatar does it more indirectly and more sophisticatedly. It all has a set of non-state actors, meaning media empire that they have built through Al Jazeera. So those two countries remain hostile to India. Then the relationship with Iran has gone bad, but I do not really see that as something too bad to have happened, because if Iran had to make choices when it is hit by American sanctions, and if the choice was between India and China, where would you go if you were an Iranian? And also, unlike China, India was not in a position to defy American sanctions and carry on with its relationship with Iran. So I don't see that as bad news. In some ways, I see it as good news, because at least our romance with Iran has broken a little bit. That needed a touch of realism. Now let us see what is it that hasn't gone right. So first of all, we've come this far without talking about Russia. Now it's been 30 years since the end of the Cold War. I know that Rahul Gandhi in his video said that we used to balance everything, Russia here, America there, and Europe there, etc., etc., etc. But the fact is, Putin's Russia is a different entity altogether. 31 years after the Cold War, see what happened when trouble began in Ladakh. The first country our defense minister went flying to, in fact the only country went flying to, or any country that any senior minister went flying to, was Russia. Why? Because it tells you that even 31 years after the Cold War, despite 25 years of very high economic growth and 6 years under Narendra Modi, India is still not been able to get rid of its military hardware dependence on Russia. That's a very dangerous position to be in, because Russia today does not have any ideological commitment to India. Russia today punches way above its weight globally, because it's a kind of nuisance state, and a state that has power in limited dimensions. It's a military power, it's an energy power, but beyond that, not that much. And there, if your dependence on Russia is for the military stuff, then the same Russia wants to sell the same hardware to China or to Turkey. You see S-400s, the Chinese already have them. India will have them maybe at the end of 2021, and who knows if the Turks go ahead and have them defying America, then we will have two allies of Pakistan with the same high-tech, very high-tech missiles as India's. So Russia today is in the marketplace selling to everybody. The Chinese, as we know, are already flying the Sukhoi 30 equivalents. So that is the situation we are in. So that is a failure. Then if you want to see failures, see what has happened with China. Now, I don't want to say that what's happened with China and Pakistan is a failure in the sense that I would have expected something much better to happen. But there are issues there, and the reason we haven't talked about those right now is that the ties with these two countries are part of our analysis of why things have gone wrong on strategic and foreign policy. Now, China, I think Narendra Modi made a basic and big miscalculation early on when he thought that because he was a strong leader and because he had come with a big majority, he'll be able to sort out many basic problems with China on a one-to-one basis with Xi Jinping. There was a misreading of Xi Jinping, his personality, but there was also, I would say, a breathless and immature misreading of the Chinese system. Because Xi Jinping may be the second most powerful leader in China after Deng Xiaoping. But in the Chinese system, an individual leader's power to take discretionary calls or to take immediate decisions on various things or key things is much less than, I would say, those of Narendra Modi at the peak of his power. And that is where a kind of funny equation built up, which is now well known in the diplomatic circles, and the relationship overall went south. 2017, the Chinese came calling in Doklam. That was a kick in the shins. And since then, the Chinese have dealt with India as if they are the superior power. Now, to think that you could handle China on a one-on-one basis. So this is the flaw, an over-dependence on an over-personalized approach to foreign policy making or to diplomacy. Because personalized diplomacy or over-personalized diplomacy can work between the leaders of two states if these are states of about equal powers. Or it can work between two states if you are the state that is the stronger power. In this case, you were not the state that was the stronger power, and you did not have the same power as China. So it was a mismatched equation, and there Xi Jinping took advantage of it and kept pushing India. In fact, it is now quite evident that he saw the summit in Wuhan not as some sort of unveiling of some new Wuhan spirit and nice cool breeze, but he saw it as Narendra Modi coming to him and essentially pleading for peace and non-interference, basically hoping that he will not upset the apple cart before the oncoming elections, because Pakistan could not have done it. The Chinese could have done it, because if Chinese come and sit somewhere across the line of actual control, you have to do something about it. And as Modi government has realized, and I think for the good reasons, they've acted maturely. I said this before, in Ladakh, you cannot start something with the Chinese hastily in a fit of anger under public pressure, because unlike with Pakistan, you cannot start something with China and close it by claiming victory. That is very difficult. That is the one problem. The second problem is, look at Pakistan. Now, India, for the first time in its history, I would say, has made its foreign policy or strategic policy a prisoner or so intertwined to its domestic politics that it's become a prisoner of that. Why do we say so? Because if all of India's domestic politics is going to be run on the basis of winning elections through the fear of Muslims, with the presumption that Muslims will not vote for us and others will consolidate because they are suspicious of the Muslims, then you do many funny things, such as you have to have Pakistan as a permanent enemy, so you can't reach out to Pakistan, then you have to reach out to China. You close your options. You can't play between China and Pakistan. Okay, you can toss that. But once you do this, then it has other implications. For example, in the othering of the Muslim, you bring in a CAA. Now, CAA, you say, all right, if I'm giving citizenship to Hindus and Sikhs and Buddhists and Christians who are persecuted in Pakistan, Afghanistan, what is the harm? But nobody misses the fine print, because that is only up to a certain time, almost 5 years back from now. So it's not as if any Hindu or Sikh coming in gets the benefit of CAA. And second, everybody knows the connection between CAA and NRC, because NRC is directed at first identifying those who are foreign nationals and then using CAA to give Indian citizenship to all those who are not Muslims. So when people say that this is an instrument of disenfranchising Muslims, they are not wrong, they are absolutely right, they are dead right, because CAA is hyphenated firmly with NRC. So unless the government says there will be no NRC, and you are saying to Bangladesh that I am saying it in public, but I don't mean it. So you've also alienated your closest friend in the neighborhood, your closest and the second strongest nation in your neighborhood, second strongest after Pakistan. India is obviously the strongest. You've put Hasina Wazid's politics in peril, because she also lives in a democracy. She has to deal with public debate in her area. So again, you've allowed your domestic politics to define your relationship with Pakistan, to define your relationship with Bangladesh. And now if you go and tell Hasina Wazid, even that no, it's only for elections, let West Bengal elections be over. But then there will be Assam elections, then there will be Uttar Pradesh elections. There is always some election or the other taking place in India where sizable Muslim vote is involved. And if sizable Muslim vote is involved, then sizable expectation of polarized Hindu vote will also be there. So that is what happens. So first big mistake, over personalizing diplomacy. Second big mistake, bringing in domestic politics in with your foreign and strategic vital interest. Third big mistake, taking your eye off the ball with your smaller neighbors. Nepal, a very good example. Oli was a friend of India. Our arrogance and so many things that happened between India and Nepal that created this hostility about Nepal. Remember the reception Narendra Modi got when he first went to Kathmandu. He could have won an election hands down in Kathmandu that day. But since then, he's not been able to deliver. See this, and I'm coming to this failure of execution, but he's not been able to deliver on the promise of that goodwill. Since then, India has behaved with Nepal like an arrogant big nation, whereas an even bigger nation to Nepal's north has moved in looking like it wants to help and has no disputes with Nepal. Similarly with Sri Lanka, India celebrated the fact that Rajapaksa lost power the first time, new people came in, the Chinese have a setback for some time, but in the course of time, Chinese now have so much money that they can buy up the important people, the elites in these countries, and that's what did in Sri Lanka also, and now the Rajapakshas are back. So once again, India lost out there, and now we know what's happening with the Colombo port and what happened earlier with Hambantota. So these are the various situations, and that's where I come to the final issue. The final issue is that India is oversimplifying foreign policy under Narendra Modi. What do we mean? Oh, I met Trump, I met Xi Jinping, I met Putin, I met Abe. Now the rest will follow. But there is a failure of execution. Look at the Chinese, the way they built infrastructure projects in other countries. Look at the pace at which we are building infrastructure projects in our country. Look at the progress on the bullet train in collaboration with Japan. If work had started on this, the Japanese would have got the impetus to do more with India. But our execution has been poor. And next, we have been prisoners of ideology, and in many places misplaced ideology. Now, Donald Trump, even if you want a transactional relationship with him, then why only a relationship of maybe buy a few C-17s, a few C-130s, a few Apaches, a few artillery pieces. Why just that? Why not sign a tiny trade deal? Because that's what he wants. That is also part of transaction. But the ideological problem is this paranoia about global trade. Not getting over this is Narendra Modi's major failure, because I can understand commitment to ideology, but for a leader like Narendra Modi, who towers over the RSS, over everybody else, he should be able to say, what you're saying on trade is fine, but let me decide what is in the larger national interest. And India has the confidence of dealing with this. And the funny thing is that you're not willing to give a tiny trade deal to America or do an FTA with EU or anybody else, but you allowed meanwhile China to build a trade surplus of $60+ billion per year, hoping that that somehow will buy you peace with China. The Chinese saw that as ransom, and they thought once you start paying ransom, once the other side gets used to ransom, then you know what happens with a blackmailer? The blackmailer will always ask for more. So those are the essential blunders that have been made here, and that's why the picture on India's strategic policy and strategic situation is so mixed and quite fraught right now. It could have been much better. Having said all that, I'd say at one level I have some satisfaction that India's illusions about China have broken, because this expectation somehow ancient cultures, Asian neighbors, friends, personal friends, these things have never worked with China, not at least since the new China came in, since the PRC came in. And to remain under that illusion was quite a big error. So in China, I would say I can do no better than bring back to you poet Shailendra's words, which he wrote for Devanand, one of our most memorable sad songs from Hindi cinema, from the film Guide in 1965. Kya se kya ho gaya bewafa tere pyar mein. So there's a line there, chalo suhana bharam to toota mana ke husn kya hai. So let me just say apologies Shailendra, chalo suhana bharam to toota mana ke cheen kya hai. So once again, just like Nehru, maybe even more than Nehru, this government had got besotted with China, and they thought that China had changed and they were going to be able to change China's strategic conduct. This Ladakh has been a tough, rude, but a very useful reality.